Hello, and welcome back to Portrait of an Editor. I am Francis Lombard. In this episode, I talked with Jamie S. Rich, editor-in-chief of Ignition Press. We covered this year's San Diego Comic-Con, Ignition Press's first anniversary, and the romance comic series Jamie is writing, The Dogsitter. I've been doing this podcast since 2017, and yes, I know my production has dropped off, but it's great to know that even after almost 10 years, there are still so many editors with stories I can still tell. Jamie is one of them. As usual, you can find all the old episodes of Portrait of an Editor at its Patreon page and get almost 170 episodes for $1 a month. Thank you so much for listening. Now here's my interview with Jamie S. Rich. Enjoy. Hi, Jamie, and welcome to Portrait of an Editor. We've been talking a little bit about stuff before we started recording. Let me just jump in and just say congratulations on your 1-year anniversary. Also, second, it's 4 days out since Comic-Con. So I hope you've recovered. Did you get any con crud or anything?
I've largely avoided the con crud, and I've been good this year. I've been learning to be better about just going to bed. I've been at this long enough. I've lost the FOMO of like, oh, something's going to happen at the bar.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sad to hear about tomorrow. So outside of a froggy voice for a bit, which is mostly back to normal, I've managed to avoid any sort of other health issues outside of, getting back to normal eating habits and normal digestive habits. But otherwise it was smooth sailing this year in regards to getting through without picking up anything nasty.
You were outside of the con, right? In a pavilion.
Yeah.
Okay.
If anybody ever actually remembers from 20 years ago now, but when Scott Morse created Trickster, which sort of was the first person to ever go like, what if I just rented that place across the street from Comic-Con and had everyone over there? And so that was very creator driven. We ended up in the same exact space this year as that was in, which was very exciting. So it was right across the street, right next to Peanuts. I don't know what was going on with the Peanuts gallery, but it was super popular constantly. But yeah, we had our own space, 3 floors. eBay Live was streaming out of there. Revenge of was setting up their podcast network out of there. We had creators at their tables, and no badge necessary. So I think our estimate was 27,000 people came through. It's not necessarily unique people since we didn't count like, oh, you were here yesterday, but it was super active, but also really kind of like this neat oasis away from the convention, air conditioned. We had our own catering. It was really cool.
It's been almost 10 years since I went to San Diego. And I think they were beginning to move outside and just have places set up. I remember another artist, I think, and you guys are working with him, but now I'm drawing a complete blank, who did a 30 Days a Night. He just set up at a bar at the Marriott across the street.
Ben Templesmith.
Ben Templesmith, yeah. And he got a lot of ink regarding that. And I think that was more than 10 years ago. Do you feel this expansion out allows, somebody like Ignition Press to, interact with people and have a better con?
Yeah, I mean, interestingly enough, we started it last year with a space that was farther away just because we were too late to get a space on the show floor.
Mm-hmm.
So out of necessity, we found this other spot. And then this year we had a small table in the indie section of the floor that had some product, but also was like, go over there. So it allowed us to have a lot more control, probably a little more focused traffic because people came specifically, but it also meant anyone on the boardwalk could just come in. And so we got a lot of looky-loos. There was, what is this? John J. Pearson was doing live paintings to promote The Patron, which was just coming out. For the Dogsitter in my book, we created a station in front of the site because we knew it had a lot of dogs going by. So we put out water bowls and a stand with free ash cans for the Dogsitter. And there was graphics there, and so you could see people from stopping and taking pictures with the graphics with their dogs. At least one person came back that was not a comic book person. That's just like, she wanted to know how the story ended. So it worked in that regard. So yeah, it just felt like people would come over and visit us, and even though it was crowded, it still felt like they could take a breather. Particularly because we had a back area that was staff only, where there was food and snacks and water and our own barista. We have a habit of overdoing everything, and certainly that it was a lot to take on. But I mean, I never even went on the show floor. I just went across the street to go to panels and one
And
signing, and so I never even saw what the rest of it looked like.
and they shifted the panels outside of the convention too at times. I think they were beginning to do that.
Yeah,
But you
some
need
are
to.
in the hotel next door, some are next to Hall H, so you could just go to whichever side you were going to and jump in there.
Do you need a pass to get
Yeah,
into these panels? You still need the, but
yeah,
you don't need a pass for something like where you were set up and everybody else was set up, or maybe
yeah,
even.
because we're not officially sanctioned by the con, so like, yeah, there's no reason to control the patches going in and out.
So as somebody who worked for DC and has been in older companies who are on the floor, or like DC was an anchor for the floor.
Yeah,
Um, do you feel what's your take? Which one would you prefer?
I prefer this. I mean,
Yeah.
because again, we can control the environment a bit more, and it's easier access. It is still full of people, but because it was a constant stream. But yeah, to go to and from the hotel, not to have to go through those giant masses just to get in and out, was just, for me, was nicer. And then having our own spot in the back that you could just go and relax or take a meeting. Yeah, there's just a level of control that's really excellent. I don't know math wise how the costs offset, but I can't believe it's more than getting a giant booth.
Seeing that it has been a year, and congratulations on it being your year through. And I remember sort of the announcement, and as we were talking before we started recording, there was just the three of you, and
Yeah.
now you were saying there's 70. You have 70 books in development, or 70 books on your, spinning plates, really.
Yeah, something like that. Like we made a lot of quick deals. We made a lot of multi-book deals, but we reached out to talent we were interested in working with and was just like, "What do you got?" And it sounds almost like BS, but our mandate was we wanted to find creator-owned projects that the creator was excited about, and that we could also get excited about. And I often to say that, like, hear why you want to do the story is almost more important to us than what the story is. Because particularly, I think you're dealing with comics and genre fiction. There's a lot of repetition, a lot of tropes, a lot of I loved this when I was young, and so I want to do my version. And we all do that, but at the same time, it's like, well, what are you bringing to it that's special? Anyone can do their own version of Batman, but what makes a Tom King Batman versus a Scott Snyder versus Batman versus Grant Morrison? Like, they all bring something of themselves to it. And so giving creators this place where it's like, hey, do the thing that you think everyone else is going to say no to. That might be the thing I say yes to. And so we're getting like a variety of material and trying to not repeat ourselves and trying to have a little bit of everything. So sci-fi, horror, crime, romantic comedy, it's all been in there. So it's been pretty exciting just to sort of watch the material come to life and see the talent getting excited about what they're doing.
When did you really realize that it's the personality that really, is it because of working on characters that have been around for 100 years almost, that it really is the personality that drives something, and then that can work for any genre, anything in the comics. But that, I'm, I'm latching onto that because it just seems like that really is important. Because me as a reader, I just sometimes I get bored with comics, but
Yeah.
it's really the personality that you're attracted to. That is an element that I don't really hear people. I don't know. I don't hear people talk about enough. But when did you notice that?
Probably pretty early on. I mean, my
Okay.
first job was as being as an assistant at Dark Horse Comics, and I was working with Bob Schreck and Diana Schutz,
Hmm. Hmm.
who sort of are legends now, and were at that time, had I knew them from Kamiko, which was
Yep.
very important to me as a kid. So I was immediately working on create our own stuff, and at that time it was a very exciting time to be at Dark Horse because you had legend, so Frank Miller and Dave Gibbons and Arthur Adams and Mike Mignola, and so I was already seeing that. But formatively, why I was really into those kinds of comics was because of Kamiko and indie comics. I read all kinds of stuff as a lad that I was probably shouldn't have, but I had carte blanche at the comic book store. My dad, probably in a bit of a fit of guilt in the divorce years, signed off and like he can just have whatever he wants. So I was reading all of it, and so reading Rendell and seeing Matt Wagner and talk about stuff he liked, like music and letters columns and stuff, or reading Love and Rockets and seeing playlists was the first time I was like, oh, these guys are actually kind of like me. Like these are folks that like the other things that I like. And so, yeah, getting into creator owned comics and editing them right off the bat it's just you and the creator in a lot of ways. And so trying to understand their vision and seeing where it's going is what drives everything. And I followed that with being editor in chief of Oni Press. And, that was at the time two people only, as Joe Nosmack, the publisher, and myself. So, at that level, you're doing black and white comics for very little money. So it's all about, can I get along with this person? Are we going to have a good time working together? Is this something I want to read? But also a lot of cartoonists just doing it all themselves, writing and drawing. So personality really is important. And yeah, it is. It's, and then working for years for DC and IDW, you do get to a point too where you're like, yeah, some personalities aren't worth it.
And as an editor, when you're reading stuff in scripts, can you tell when maybe a writer is not being, I guess, honest of like with their personality, is like maybe censoring themselves, or not. It sounds like something you would like to see people just be completely honest and just let it all hang out. Do you feel like they're holding back? Have you discovered that at points, and how do you address that?
Yeah, you definitely find that with folks who've become used to working for the big two, where you have to think like they won't let Superman do this, they
Mhm.
won't let Spider-Man do this. I can't get away with that joke. So there is an element of having to just basically remind them of like, you don't have to worry about that. You can do whatever you want. We don't have any rules. Uh, so usually that's the main thing to get them away from, of like, don't hold yourself back because you think there's somebody on the other side who's going to say you can't do that. Um, and then I think even at DC, there would be times where you would even have that kind of conversation of like, you're not getting to the heart of the moment here and what it means to you. Um, but yeah, once you've broken through, it gets pretty easy, and I'm pretty straightforward with notes. I'm not going to give you a note that I don't have some kind of explanation for. I'm also not tied to any note I'm giving. I can be talked out of it. I just want to know that you're thinking about these things. So I tend to not overnote, because some editors will just feel like they have to justify their job by how much red ink they use. But I want you to know that if I'm coming at you with something, uh, there's reasoning behind it. And so it really does come down to a personal relationship at that point, and trust. And once you find that balance, it's pretty easy back and forth at that point.
When you're giving notes, how many passes do you push on for that note, especially if it's something you believe in? But if you get a no, do you come back? How do you make your case when it comes to notes?
I mean, I don't get too dogmatic about it. Um, the thing that I would be looking for if I get pushback on a suggestion is, do you have a reason why you're doing this? And does that make sense? Because often a note is a question, like, what if you did this, or why would it go in this direction? And if you don't have an answer to that, then maybe you have a problem. So ultimately, if there's a disagreement, if I'm not entirely sold on the explanation I've gotten, it probably just comes down to then saying, okay, well, understand that I interpreted this way. Other people might. If you're good with that, we can forge ahead. But what I'm maybe pointing out is a potential misinterpretation of what you're trying to do. And I don't know, doing it long enough, it's all, sometimes you realize like nobody else cares. Nobody else is going to notice
No
this.
one's going to notice. Yeah.
There is one thing when something doesn't go the right way, if there's a mistake, it is worth reminding yourself of no one knows what it was supposed to be.
Mhm.
So to them, that looks like what it was supposed to be. But my editorial philosophy that I try to pass down when I'm training younger editors is, are you making it better or are you making it different? Because a lot of the times you're just making it different because it's a matter of personal choice. So maybe I don't like when a character, actually I do. I have this weird pet peeve where I hate when the character takes their glasses off and pinches the bridge of their nose because they're tired. Because I'm like, it's just such a shortcut cliche.
Mhm.
And sure, people do it, but how often? Not as often as you see it probably in a comic book. But that's just my personal choice. So if the artist is like, that's the shorthand I'm going to use to convey that emotion, my saying don't do that doesn't make it better, just makes it different. And that's obviously a very like small detail, but even in the bigger questions of it, stories can go in a million different directions. So really the north star is like, well, what was the intention, what's the vision behind this? Because if I'm working with a writer like Stephanie Williams on Roots of Madness, it's not about what I want that book to be, it's what she set out to do and how do I get her to the point where it is the book she wants. So understanding what they're trying to communicate, I need to then be the reader that's like, did you get that through to me? And I won't always catch it because I've drank the Kool-Aid at the beginning and I know, so I might know too much, but that's why we have assistants and none. If I'm editing a book or Maggie Howell's editing a book before it goes to press, the other one reads it as a cold. I read this not knowing as much about it, and this stood out to me, or that stood out to me, and you'd be surprised what you find in that regard and how helpful that can be. So yeah, it's a lot of checking your ego at the door and just being there for the project.
How much of a prelim conversation do you have with the creators to make sure you understand what they're going for?
Um, quite
Um,
a quite a bit because you're going to start off with an initial pitch
yeah.
that should be more than just like plot and concept. You want to kind of understand the characters, the tone. I mean, I actually learned the hard way pitching myself here for the Dogsitter. I didn't think through what I was turning in. I had an outline, and I was like, "They can just read the outline," because I'm so used to just doing my own thing. And initially, got kind of a lukewarm reaction to it. But my editor was like, no, he knows what he's doing. Let's just do it. And then I realized as I was working on the first script and reading my own outline, I was like, oh, this didn't give them anything about the tone of the book, didn't explain certain things to them. It was just very much here's the plot.
Here, this is, yeah.
Yeah. And so it was like an epiphany for me in terms of being, oh, yeah, I have to explain that. And I even pulled Jeremy Hahn aside. I'm like, you do it too. You're so used to just going off and doing your own books and that everyone's going to trust us and we want them to judge us like everyone else. We have to give them the same information as everyone else. So it starts right there, right from the get go, before we say yes. How much do we understand this thing wants to be? And then from there, it's kind of based on the process of the person. Because if they're a big outline person, I want them to do an outline. If they're not, I just kind of want them to talk to them like, let's figure out what the structure is and understand what our issues are going to be, to make sure we've got the right amount of story going. And then yeah, it's conversations about the script once they come in. But once we're locked in, uh, it, it's easier. But yeah, trying to have information ahead of time of like I need to know where we're going so that I can edit in that direction. I've
Mhm.
worked on books where you get like 4 or 5 pages at a time just to keep up with the artist. and you don't have a good outline, and you're just like, I can't edit more than what's in front of me. So you might not be going in the right direction, but I can't tell. So here we have the benefit of being able to control our schedules and not being beholden to uh, a specific publishing need. We have slots to fill, but like we don't have to fill them a certain way. Like there has to be this many Batmans and this many Harley
Yeah.
Quinns. So and again, having 70 different things in various stages, I'm working on stuff that's not going to come out until 2027, 2028. The luxury of having series written before too much of it's drawn or even any of it's drawn. I've got a 10 issue mini series that's 8 issues of script right now, and the artist has been reading. I'm keeping up, but they can't start for another couple months. So we'll probably be done with the whole thing before she even starts drawing, and being able to actually stand back and look at it and see it as a whole thing. Whereas is amazing. Whereas in a
Hmm.
monthly comic, or even you're at one of the bigger companies, you're going to be like, we got to issue 5 and issues 4 is already being drawn, and we missed a clue that we needed in issue 2 and it's too late. So it's I think that also helps in terms of just the creativity of like we get to get the 20,000 foot view and really look at the whole package.
And you're looking at it first really emotionally. You're really working out what the characters are and the emotional or tone and everything first before that, almost like worrying about when you get a, and this is maybe in the pitch, and also with Dog Sitter, that maybe you got reminded that it's really what moves a pitch forward is more tone, emotional, what you're aiming for, other
Yeah.
than the A, B, C, D of the plot and how these characters end up wherever they end up. Is that something you've really picked up?
Yeah, I mean, plot's pretty standard.
Yeah.
Like and I've talked to different writers over the years when I was a younger editor, particularly ones that would move between the creator owned and the in work for hire space, and talk to them about genre. And you know, the advice was given to me by Matt Wagner once. He's like, just pick the plot you like and go with it, because the rest is what you bring to it. And so the A, B, and C of how you get there is often not as important as the the stuff that fills in between. So it definitely, yeah, gives us a stronger vision of being able to sort of follow that. And I'm blessed with the memory of a very old goldfish. So I can't even remember my own character's name sometimes. So I don't spend a lot of time going back to the outline or looking backwards and being like, is this what we said it was going to be? I tried to read every script brand new. I try to read it as a reader who's picking it up off the shelf and just reacting to it. So sometimes, sure, I might miss a continuity thing, but really, it's like how much does this resonate with me as a person?
Hmm. Now, with Dog Sitter, after you get that lukewarm response, and you had a, what was it that you felt that, did you, I don't know, what of all the things you picked up in all your years of editing, how did you come back at it again to sort of to fix it and get the response you were looking for?
Some of it was, yeah, just sort of recognizing what the questions to me had been. Well, the main thing was also making it a policy that the writer, if it was myself or Jeremy Hahn, who are currently both writing for the company, would no longer be in the pitch meeting for our own books, because it was horrifying. It was terrible, to be on the defensive. So now we have a more controlled process for the interior stuff so that people can respond anonymously. Not that they held back, but no, it was just, yeah, like, well, what, having to sort of go like, well, taking my own advice. I'm like, well, if it can be misinterpreted this way, if they're seeing it in this light, what's missing? Um, and luckily, again, I just knew my story well enough to have answers to those questions, even if I didn't always have them on the spot because I was taken aback. I've kind of picked up even over the years as a writer talking to artists. If you know your world well enough, if you understand what you're doing, when questions come up that you've never thought about, you'll probably have an answer anyway. I remember developing A Boy and a Girl with Natalie Norgat, and which was set in a near distant future, and she had lots of questions about currency and religion, things that I hadn't thought about. But because was in it, I'd be like, oh, it would be this, it would be that, and if the answer didn't come that easy, it was pretty. Then that was the fun of figuring it out. But so luckily, again, I on Dogsitter I already had Maggie Howell as my editor, and we've worked together at DC, worked together at IDW. I brought her over here, so there's already a trust there. So she took some control and was like, You've got this. What everyone's concerned about is not a concern. You can do this." And so just write trusting it and writing it. And I was like, I'll answer it in the scripts.
Hmm.
uh, and yeah, I feel like that worked.
So what is it that made you want to write Dog Sitter?
um I've lost a little bit of it because it was the last thing I was working on before DC hired me in 2015 that I was developing. And I initially actually wrote it as a screenplay to try.
Hmm.
I was like, I want to try to do something different. Um, and the general impetus of it, I think, goes back to I was looking at the movie The Apartment, directed by Billy Wilder, and starring Jack Lemmon and Shirley MacLaine, and just love it. It's like a perfect
Classic. Yeah.
movie.
Yeah.
And thinking about that scenario, which was Jack Lemmon plays an office schlub in the 50s whose boss makes him vacate his own apartment so that he can bring his affairs over there, and one day leaves him with one of the girls who is also works in their office. And it's pretty dark and
Hmm.
deep, while also being very funny. And so I think I was reimagining that, like, okay, how would I want to see this today? um and flipping the genders around and sort of playing with that scenario, and so creating a love triangle in a similar fashion. And in this case, the male characters is sort of this himbo that is bouncing between his boss and this young woman he meets, who's our main character, who also walks her dog. So that it gets pretty complicated from there. And it's, yeah, just kind of growing out of that, wanting to write a certain type of female character for a rom com. I think the first scene of the book's the first thing I had and the first thing I wrote, which was seeing the guy on a walk of shame,
Hmm.
and their initial meet cute is her snickering at him and calling him a slut, which particularly in 2015 was like, this is not what you're normally going to see. Um, and yeah, and just running with it. 12 Reasons Why I Love Her, which was my first graphic novel, came out of a similar mission to myself of like, okay, what would I want to see in an indie romantic movie, and who would my leads be? And the reason they're named Evan and Gwen is at the time, which was like early 2000s, it was Ewan McGregor and Gwyneth Paltrow.
Hmm. Hmm.
So just kind of, yeah, building it from there and creating my own thing out of it. And yeah, and the dog sitter ended up pulling in all kinds of personal things about. I mean, I was just becoming a dog person at that point after being a cat person all my life, and but also ruminating on certain choices people make and certain choices I've made. Um, because I say it's not a will they or won't they, it's a should she or shouldn't she, in a lot of regards of like, yeah, should she date this guy even though he's in this bad relationship with his boss? Maybe, maybe not.
And what about romance comics? When it sounds like there's the rom com influence, and when with The Apartment, but comics has a long history of romance comics. Did you? And it's been a while since I've read any, but I know some people have taken stabs at that. Have you looked back at the history of that? Are is there any influence from that when it comes, what was going on with romance comics, or are they just too aged out?
No, I have some awareness of that, and there's things to draw from in terms of like big emotion, of not holding that stuff back, not being coy. and yeah, going for that level of melodrama. I definitely love the art style from classic romance comics, and gravitate to artists that can do that because acting is so important I mean, people call them talking head comics, but they're, yeah, comics with lots of conversation. You're going to need a lot of acting. You need some clever devices to keep things moving, which turns out dogs are great for. Because I'm
Mhm.
like, I need something here. The dog does something silly. Great. Um, and then manga is, I think, a big influence in that regard as well, because manga has the soap opera plots that now often lack in comics. But if you think about classic Marvel in particular and why the 60s Marvel was so revolutionary, it was Peter Parker had a full life. And all the, Mysterio attacking the city happened on his way home to visit Aunt May and deliver her medicine, or while he was going on to meet Mary Jane for a date, and now he's late and he looks like an ass. That kind of stuff like really is the bread and butter of comics, and I actually think is lacking a lot in current superhero comics. They don't. It's all about the next big fight and not about the next small. It's not the small things that fight disrupts.
Yeah, no, it's more, as we were talking at one point, about the personality aspect of, you know, what is the creator bringing to these things and letting their personality really shine, so that and the world being able to pick up on their point of view, because everybody has a unique point of view. And how does the creator bring this out for these books? And it's not the fights. I mean, I've been reading superhero comics my entire life, and oh yeah, a fight. It's more what's going on in between, which is really the melodrama of the Marvel and stuff, what they brought there. I mean, I feel that it really is the emotional aspect and the personalities that um, make a comic pop in a way. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, it's even like you talk about, like, say, the Batman movies. The guy playing Batman's only as good as his Bruce Wayne, and without the good Bruce Wayne to be a counterpoint to the Batman, he's not as interesting. He's just this angry guy in a suit, and yeah, and there's only so many machinations you can do in terms of the cosmic plot. So but that also adds the stakes.
Mhm.
If he didn't have to worry about Alfred and Dick and everyone else in his life, there's no stakes for him. It's just a nonstop battle. So, or Superman and Lois. Readers love I use the phrase, "Are will they or won't they?" But you know, how long did the Wolverine, Jean Grey, Scott Summers love triangle go on, and people rooting for their one or the other? So it's the grounding that makes these characters identifiable. Um, Peter Parker again being the classic, to where all these readers are like, "That's me. I have money troubles. I have girl troubles. Like I relate." And oh, it'd be great to have superpowers, but look how it doesn't help.
And with the dog setter, seeing you don't have that extra element, did you find it sort of freeing that you could just really deal with humans and the insecurities of people, or the wants that you were able to, and then play them up a little bit, because there's a sarcasm that I loved in the book. There's also the dogs appear to be sort of like the choir going on and reacting. There's a lot of layers going on, and of course the acting, the art is just great, and just the emotionals. You can just flip through them and get the story, and and it just think and get the idea of what's going on. There's no thought bubbles, so but you understand what
Yeah.
these characters are dealing with. Do you feel that not having the supernatural element just allows you to even dive deeper into these people?
Yeah, I mean, and you mentioned the art. Megan Levins is like the perfect
Yeah.
artist for the book, because she already was doing her own web comics about her own dogs. But yeah, she gets people, she gets dogs. It's been super fun, and then Nick Filardi brought this whole other thing to it when he colored it. He colors it like these 1960s magazine illustrations that the colors kind of even bleed out of the lines in a way that is exciting. But I've always been more attracted to the human behavior aspect of it, of storytelling, and any story in any genre is about what will this character do in this situation. And I'm also a big pop music guy, which is all about big emotions and love and things going wrong. So yeah, not having to pause to figure out like, well, what's going to be the threat from outside of this issue? The threats all coming from inside the house is for me makes more sense to me. I mean, I wrote It Girl and the Atomics for 12 issues and discovered, oh, superhero plots are weird, hard. Like, why? If you lived in Gotham, why would you ever try to rob a liquor store? Like, you're gonna get the crap beat out of you. So yeah, it's just to me, there's the human stakes mm, are more fascinating. And I remember when I used to work with Andy Watson at Oni, and we did books like Breakfast Afternoon and Dumped, which were all like interpersonal relationship books. We'd get accused of like nothing happened in this issue, and his best line was like, just because someone didn't get punched in the face doesn't mean nothing happened. So there's plenty of stakes and plenty of personal um, problems to be solved in the dog sitter, but the actual relationship is gets to be a little more operatic at times because it becomes the center stage.
And do you think that's a problem with American comics? Because we were, manga, and I think some of the exchanges, there's romance comics and manga. There's Europeans are doing it. Do you feel that it's really just people's attitude towards American comics that something like the Dog Sitter stands out?
Yeah, I mean, everyone's. I mean, I've been writing romance comics now for like 20 years, and every time I do another one, people are like, "You're crazy! Why do you keep doing these?" But people want them, so yeah, you know, I don't know exactly why we've been stuck in this rut for since the comics code and everything became tame and other genres died, which are the, people have theorized is why the comics code happened was a way to destroy EC comics and get rid of genre, and then ended up backfiring and with the toothless sort of years that followed. And I don't know why we can't expand out of that because you do see from time to time things emerge that have a little different of a bend and don't have supernatural elements or cosmic elements, like Giant Days being an example in recent years of a series that was really successful and was just about people. Um, and I always even prefer genre stuff that melds different kinds of things. So, like Dinner Date, which we've announced for Ignition for October by Joanne Starr and Kari Randolph, is a vampire rom com. It's Shaun of the Dead, but with a little more of a sweetheart romance in the middle. Um, I love that kind of stuff. I love the ways to bring humanity into something that could otherwise be just tropey. Blade Runner was all about Deckard falling in love with a woman that turned out to be a spoilers replicant, and
Hmm.
he had to save her.
Hmm.
Uh, that sort of drive to me is more identifiable. I'm not good enough of a person to want to save the universe. Or I watch apocalypse movies or read dystopian comics and be like, I wouldn't want to live through this.
No.
I just give up. Let the zombie bite me. Um, but if there's someone I care about that I don't want to get bitten by the zombie, that gives me a whole different motivation.
Do you feel that the romance comics? I mean, Dog Sitter's out, right? How many
Yeah.
issues are out? Two.
Number one is out, and number two will be out in I think 2 weeks. Something
So
like
you're saying you've been writing romance comics for a while. Do people discover them later? I mean, what's sort of the life of a romance comic in a American romance comic?
Yeah, there's a perennial aspect to them. The first one again I did was 12 Reasons Why I Love Her with Joel Jones, and people come to me about that all the time. And, it keeps getting found. I always joke like back in the old days of the Brian Bendis Jinx World message board. Every month for years, someone would pop up and be like, "Hey, have you guys heard of this comic Blankets?"
Yeah.
And it's like you'd think everyone has heard of it, but and it's emotional stuff has a resonance that carries on if it's true. Again, I always go back to music. If you look at bands like The Cure, why are they still popular? Why is Robert Smith duetting with Olivia Rodrigo and suddenly appealing to younger fans again? Why does every high school have teenagers in black t-shirts who are discovering this kind of music? It's because that emotion is eternal and renewable, and it will hit you different at different ages. Like I can listen to the old Cure stuff now and I feel a completely different way about it. But that's hopefully the depth of it, and the truth of it is like something that hits in a certain emotion will always have that emotion. You'll just react to it in ways that are different based on your experience and age. So everyone's heart's going to get broken at some point, and when you discover 12 Reasons Why I Love Her or The Dog Sitter, it might just be the right time to go, oh, this is what I'm dealing with now, and I can relate.
And with Ignition Press, is what is your game plan on trying to keep books in the market and have that sort of long tail aspect of there's so many comics coming out
Yeah.
every day, of giving something that you're either editing or writing a chance to get noticed.
We're going to collect everything, and our
Mhm.
first collections are just starting to come out. In fact, we had at San Diego advanced copies of the first volume of Murder Podcast by Jeremy Hahn and Mike Tisserand, the Deluge collection by Colin Bunn and Marika Cresta, and then Voyeur by Leah Williams and David Baldione. So again, yeah, I look at it as it like no one's late to the party. So the once they get into the collected form, it gives us our opportunity for new people to keep discovering it. So yeah, our plan is to be pretty aggressive in our collections. We're working with Penguin Random House to get them out there and figure out the best ways to distribute them. But we're printing for the long term. We're not printing based on short term orders. So we trying to have a couple years of stock in hand to go. Would love them to sell faster, obviously. Um, but yeah, and honestly, I feel like as these trades come out, people will be able to, who might be skeptical of another new publisher, be able to trust us to go like, oh, these are real now. This is happening. Uh, and yeah, like all of our entering into these conversations with creators is about long term plans for the project, and that includes collections, that includes where do we want to take it in other media, what else can this be, right from the jump. That's the conversation. And unlike most companies where of this kind where the entertainment arm is a separate entity, Dark Horse Entertainment was not Dark Horse Comics. We're all one piece. So when something comes through the pitch process, our entertainment guys are weighing in and saying, hey, this is what we think we can do with it. Here are the obstacles. We're talking to the creator about what their intent is going to be, what they would like to see. It's all in one spot. And so all of our film team right now is Peter Schwerin and Terry Cohen, who are in charge of production and development. They come to the conventions. If they know we're working with Leah Williams or Jim McCann or Teeny Howard, they go and they get their other comics and they learn who these people are and what they're about, which I've never experienced before with anybody working on the entertainment side. Like they want to be as creator friendly as we are because they understand that's where it all comes from. Having worked at places like Tapas and IDW over the last couple of years, inevitably someone comes in like, why don't we have a Twilight? Why don't we create the Hunger Games? Why don't we do it ourselves?
Mhm.
And having to explain to these guys who maybe are a little more money oriented and business oriented in their backgrounds, like any successful franchise you're going to name me started with one crazy person who had an idea and they had to do it, and you can't do that in a room with a group of people just sort of spitballing. and trying to fit metrics and figure out what will be successful, I guarantee you will fail. And you see it when franchises fail. It's like, oh, you know,
Yeah.
why did Masters of the Universe not take off as a movie this year? It's because some boardroom was like, these are the pieces that will make everybody excited.
Or
And
does
so,
anybody remember Universal's Dark World?
yeah,
you know, which
yeah.
was basically not anything organic. Even though with those monsters that everybody grows up with, it's just flopped right out the gate.
Yeah, a lot of us, when Dan DiDio was let go by DC, were sort of rooting for him to get the job to take over Universal Monsters because that seemed like the thing he was born for.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I've never heard that part.
that
Okay.
was just internally at DC. Like that's to be the perfect place for him to go, and I'm sure he'd love it. But yeah, it's all about like I just have here like the reprint of THB that I wish more people were talking about because Paul Pope was such a explosion in the 90s, and he kind of was the person that taught me about like the ones you meet that like, oh, you're a little bit off your rocker, you're going to do this whether the company says you can do it here or not. And even at Ignition so far, I have tried to help certain people who I'm like, well, you might not be right for us, but I know you're going to do this thing, so who can I connect you to that will understand what you're trying to do and help you. And you see it and actually in Love Ignited, our first anthology, there's a creator named Sugar May who is one of those who was like, your style is so different. Like I don't know if Ignition at this point can get away with being super weird,
Mhm.
but somebody needs to give you a platform. So let me give you a short story. Let me introduce you to people. And she and I are talking again about like, well, what else can we do? How can we bring your point of view into what we're doing? Because I do feel like I need to build a foundation before I can get super weird. I also even learned at Oni, sometimes you can, when you're already perceived as being weird and different, you can bring in stuff that's a little too much.
Too much, yeah.
But I love those kinds of people, the ones that you're just going to do this regardless. Um,
And that's a big part of comics that you don't. I guess even in movies you can get it, but that's independent films, and
yeah,
I think that's a big part of comics that scares Hollywood. Especially the money people. So it sounds like, I mean, you've been an editor at various companies that are. I mean, it's about the comics,
yeah,
and that's what you're looking at is what am I doing in this format? What am I doing in this medium? And being honest about this medium, and then going from there.
yeah. Like we have to talk about first, like, can this be a successful publishing venture? So comics publishing leads at Ignition in terms of getting the IP. The entertainment guys tell us things that they want, things they're looking for, things that might be hard. But ultimately, the question is, will we be successful with the book? And will it be a good book? And in meeting people from outside of comics who want to work in this industry, that's kind of, I can suss right away. Like we had a big thing in at Comic Con with East Side Saints, which is written by AJ Mendez, who's best known as a wrestler, Amy Garcia, who's an actress, and Ildi Modrovich, who's a showrunner. He was a showrunner on Lucifer. But I worked with AJ and Amy previously. They've written a variety of things, including screenplays and comics. And I know right away, like they just want to tell stories and they love comic books.
Mhm.
And I even said to Amy, I'm like, I knew you were the real deal when all of the stuff you were pitching and writing, there was never like, here's Amy's character in the movie. There's never been one where it's like, this is her writing something that she can star in. And she's like, yeah, I just want to do the stories. Like, I'm not looking to create vehicles for myself. I was talking to another showrunner, director in San Diego, and he whispered to me, he's like, I know I'm not supposed to say this, but I don't care about the TV show after this. He's like, I just want this to be good.
Mhm.
I'm gonna do a comic. And so but then I've also worked with guys where they send me their scripts and you're just like, you just took your screenplay and you added pages and panels.
Yeah.
You didn't edit anything. So yeah, I can suss out right away. Like, are you really interested in this? Or are you just using me to get to the next step? And I don't want that to have to happen. I think the readers can tell too.
Yeah, and I think hopefully we moved beyond that, but it was just interesting with Ignition having this Hollywood element. But it
Yeah,
seems like, even reading the Dogsitter, this is a comic. I don't feel, there's elements about this that this is was made for this medium, and it's great. It's refreshing, and
yeah.
obviously the pedigree of Ignition and all the people working on it. You guys, you love comics. That's what you've been doing. So.
Well, and Pete and Terry were the actually the immediate champions of the dog sitter.
Mhm.
They had no doubt. They were like, "Oh, this is perfect timing. Rom coms are coming back."
Oh, good.
They were responsible for it being set in Boise, Idaho, because at the time it was like generic New York, generic LA, and they're like pick a city. Rom coms have a whole thing about like the places a character as well, and like why don't you just use where you're at? And turns out Boise's actually pretty good. Like got a lot of great settings for dates. Pete also gave me a really great note from the outline. There's a point where the character has to make a decision, and he's like, she's making the wrong decision. It's basically she was acting out of fear and accepting something when what she should be doing is saying no, I'm going to do it myself. And he was right. Completely changed that moment. So even though I give him Pete Schwerin a hard time all the time, and have introduced him as this is our Hollywood douchebag. Um, a good story instinct is a good story instinct, regardless of where it's coming from. But I will fight back. If that's good for your movie, it's not good for my comic. Is where I'll try to make a distinction of like that's the thing, that's the change you make, but on the page it will be better this way. And
Well, and I think that's it. I learned this from James Ellroy years ago. Is like I wrote the novels.
yeah,
Whatever Hollywood does, I'll cash their checks. But if you want to see my point of view, my honest point of view, read my novels. That's the story I wanted to tell, and that's what it sounds like. When we've talked, the point of view is the thing.
and we're hoping to bridge that gap by having again it all built together so that the talent is not left by the wayside, and yeah, coming back with something where you're like, that's not what it's supposed to be. And so we'll talk. I've had this in my own creations. Like, there's always certain things like, they're immutables. Like, I don't want the character to ever do this. I don't want it to go in this direction. And that's stuff that's good to know up front. Um, to use an example, everyone knows like Batman doesn't use a gun,
Hmm.
never. So when they did that in the movies and they put guns on the Batmobile for Zack Snyder movies, it's like you're not supposed to do that. Or the kerfuffle over Superman breaking the neck in Man of Steel, which is why I can't leave. Sorry, again, spoilers that they did it in Supergirl. You're like, don't you remember how that went the last time?
I, I know I'm nerding out, but I just don't understand. Yeah, I just don't get it. You're breaking something that is almost it's the core of these characters.
Yeah,
It's the physical or law that attracts everybody to these characters. The Superman will figure something out, or he'll sacrifice himself, and it
yeah.
just feels like a cheat to like, oh no, it's all right for him to do this because whatever. No, you're that's not the Superman. That's not, or yeah.
If you go
Sorry.
back, yeah, if you go back and look at Lady Killer, Joelle set up a whole thing there. Like, she never uses a gun. She often just uses objects that are around. Much more creative in that regard, but it was as a talent, Joelle avoiding a default of an easy option. And so I know that for her, if anyone were to adapt that, that's a big thing. It's like she doesn't want to run around with a pistol. That's not what that character was about. But also, I think Joelle just likes drawing really gruesome deaths and using rolling pins and things makes it much more bloody and gross.
Well, Jamie, I've had you on for an hour, even including my technical difficulty. Was there? I enjoyed the first three issues of Dog Sitter. Really enjoyed them. Once again, it's just gorgeous to look at. So far, great stuff. Is there anything else you would like to say about Dog Sitter?
It fits. I've been joking. It's like a lot of the creators that work for us don't like it, but their wives do. And Cullen Bunn gets mad because he knows I'm teasing him. Um, it fits our mission, and you bring up Showdown too, and like Showdown by Dave Wilgus and Tad Galusha. Like, initially, I brought that in, and I wanted to work with Dave, and out of his pitches, I loved it.
Yeah.
And when I pitched it to everybody, I was like, "This is the proof that we can do anything because this is
Hmm.
super grounded. There's no extra element. It is just a straight up two person crime drama, and we do this early on. And we tell everybody that like we have no limits, and it's funny because it's like showing that we can pull all the way back shows that we have no limits. But it and the dog sitter and voyeur and like the idea overall is to be and we would this is part of why we did the pavilion that allowed anyone to come in even if they didn't have a badge is our goal is like anyone walking through that door we're going to have a comic book for you. There's going to be something here that you like it. If you're a nut job like me and you love them all, fantastic, but not everyone's going to be into the romantic comedy. They might not be in, some people don't like to get scared, so murder podcast is not going to be their thing, but every everyone should be able to find something at our company that they're going to like. Um, and as you said, if you're kind of bored of standard comics, if you kind of find some of these high concept things predictable, then yeah, the dogs that are is waiting for you. It's not what you're going to expect. So so yeah, I think that's the thing. I hope people will have an open mind when they look at when they pick up one of our books and they look at the inside back cover and they see everything we have coming out that month and how
Yeah.
different they are.
Hmm.
Is that they'll have an open mind and maybe like I'll try this one that's not doesn't look like it's normally would be for me and just see what it's like.
Yeah, the eclectic lineup is just amazing, and in 1 year, everything. You guys have had one heck of a first year, so congratulations on that, and
Thank you.
I can't wait to see what you're doing in the year number two. So
Only gets crazier from here.
awesome, that's great. So it was great talking to you. Thank you for coming on, and looking forward to finishing out the dog sitter and seeing other things from Ignition. So really
Good.
appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, take care.